Good morning and welcome into the show. It is Daniel Workman coming to you live from the Dream Imaginate Sports Studios. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. early wake-up call out west and all time zones in between and around the world. Thanks for tuning in on this Thursday, the last day of April 2020. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. Hope you're having a great morning. So, everyone's still trying to figure out, what is the path forward? Where are we going? What leagues are going to try to get restarted? We've already seen some leagues with cancellations. In Europe, the Netherlands have canceled the remaining of their season. France is looking at not having a return until at least September, and just stopping the season short. In France, you have the Bundesliga that's trying to work their way back in. Lower levels of the English pyramid have announced that that their seasons are done. They will not finish, and the Premier League are trying to figure out plans to get back into training and back on the field sooner rather than later. As a Liverpool supporter in the Premier League, I would love to see them find a way to finish out the season, even if it's behind closed doors, just to finish it off and get the title done. I mean, it's all but already over, but it would be nice to officially have it done. I think it would be an absolute disservice to that team to not finish out the season and be crowned champions. You're not talking about, being at a point in the season where you're 3 points up or 6 points up or even 10 points up. You've got a big margin, a big gap. It's clear everyone has known for a while that Liverpool were going to win the league. And, I would like to see that finish out just so that officially that can happen. So, one of the other aspects of all this, we've talked about how the Euro 2020s are going to take place in 2021. And how some of the UEFA calendars and other confederation calendars are all kind of moving and shifting to work around, the coronavirus and the effects, that they're trying to sort through. In terms of another aspect of disruption is we're quickly approaching in the next 30-ish days, a little over 30 days away, the biggest shopping window of the year, and that is the summer transfer window. It's large. You start seeing things materialize in June, and teams start their training in July, and then your seasons start again in August. And in most transfer windows in the summer times are about 3 months long, roughly, 2 to 3 months long. That's a sizable time of doing business. Now, if you're in a contract that's about to expire and you're going to sign on a free, a free, usually that contract runs to the end of June, and then that's when your new contract would start in July. But you already kind of know where you're going and what you're doing. So, in terms of like official signings, you could go back and forth on, well, technically the windows, whatever. But the way clubs utilize this time, it's usually about 2.5, 3 month window where a lot of business is done, players being transferred back and forth. Now this is an area when we talk about American soccer that is so severely lacking. Major League Soccer are not active participants. The USL are not active participants, and we have this giant player pool that is being underdeveloped, under-leveraged, under-resourced, and we are not participating in this biggest shopping season of the year in terms of the transfers of players. In American sports, we're used to seeing players go back and forth in exchange for other players. That actually rarely happens in football and soccer. It's usually players going back and forth for money. So we buy the contract, and now we have your contract, and usually we're going to pay you more. We're going to kind of rip up your personal playing contract. We're going to add on some additional dollars, maybe add on some years, maybe some option years. But it's usually players moving in exchange for money, not necessarily players, although that has happened before, that players have been traded and signed in exchange for other players or players and money, etc. When we look at this coming summer's transfer market, it is completely up in the air. What kind of money are clubs going to have to throw around? When do the seasons officially end? If they're still waiting and trying to finish, we've already seen that some leagues are wanting to wait and try to get it done, even if that pushes towards the fall and pushes next season start back a little bit. So we don't know exactly when the window is going to be in. So that's one area of the unknown or the uncertainty that we don't know yet. Secondly, we don't know what the budgets are going to be. That there are going to be effects on these clubs, how much they're able to spend, how much they're willing to spend during this pandemic. What are they going to do? Is business going to get done? I think so. Is it going to be to the level that we have seen in the last few years? I don't think so. I think it will be lower. I think dollar figures will be lower. And I think some teams are going to look to utilize a loan with an option to purchase, which has been something that's kind of been utilized more recently. I think that's going to be something we are going to see in the summertime. Looking at the summer transfer window, I think you're going to see more clubs look to do deals where they basically, it's a mechanism that can basically let them do two things. One, they can it's like a free trial on a player. It's not a free trial, but if I don't like it after 30 days, I can take it back or whatever. It's not like that, but it is a little bit lower risk in that I don't have to pay you everything up front. I don't have to commit to pay you everything. I can say I'm going to pay a loan fee. Maybe it's $8 million, maybe it's $10 million, but I'm not going to pay you $100. I'm not going to pay you $150. I'm going to pay you $10 million for a loan for 1 year. We're going to pay his contract and we're going to pay you this loan fee. And then we have an option to buy after the end of the next season. So then summer of 2021, if we don't like what we see, if we don't like the player, then obviously that gives us the ability to return the player back to their club. This is actually the situation that Philippe Coutinho is in at the moment, right? He leaves Liverpool for Barcelona, which, Liverpool's my favorite club in the Premier League, but Barcelona is my favorite club above all and of all time. I knew he was going to struggle. I knew that was going to be a problem for him. I just never felt like he was going to succeed. Just the way he likes to play, and he just doesn't seem to like to adjust. It's like, no, this is who I am, and you build around that. And if you build around it, then you can, some good things can happen. If you don't build around it, he just doesn't seem to adjust to anything else. And with the cast of characters at Barcelona, including the greatest of all time, Leo Messi, everybody knew ahead of time that he was not going to be in a situation where he was going to be the top dog. And so Barcelona couldn't sell him. They ended up doing a loan deal with Bayern Munich. That blew up in their face because they got him in and they realized, we're not interested either. So now they're gonna have to try to find a home for him. And I do think he's one that they could sell, but they're probably going to sell and eat money on. But I think teams are going to try to look at a loan move the way that Bayern Munich did. I don't know that Barcelona is going to want to do that again, but that is an example of what I think we're going to see more of this summer as we look into how clubs react during this pandemic. Speaking of reacting, while you're at home and you're trying to figure out what to do, there's never been a better time than to do this, and that is to go to ductigbrand.com, DUKTIG brand.com, and do a little shopping, a little online retail therapy. Never hurt anyone. And if you take some time and go to ductigbrand.com and check out some of the journals, apparel, etc., I think you're going to find some really, really cool things. And when you drop all that in your cart, right before you go to checkout, drop in the promo code DW Show, all one word, DW Show. You'll get 10% off of your order, and get those things delivered right to your front door at a 10% discount. So there you go, ductigbrand.com, DW Show, 10% off. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back into the show. Thanks for tuning in on this Thursday, April the 30th. It's a crazy world we're living in. We're all dealing with different realities. We're all dealing with different things. And we're happy to bring on someone that I met a few years ago when Eric Winalda was running for president, and get his thoughts on the realities. And before we do, Ron Patel is the president of Rio Grande Valley Toros. Ron, welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm a little humid, acclimating to the South Texas weather, but I'm having a good time.
Well, as someone who lives close to the Gulf of Mexico, there's humidity, and then there's Gulf humidity, and I'm sure you're getting more and more acclimated to this moisture in the air compared to New Mexico, which is where you and I met. Back in 2017-18 era when Eric was running for president. Before we get into all of that and how we met, I want to get a little bit of kind of your background. Where did you grow up, and where did your connection to the game of football, the game of soccer, really begin for you?
Yeah, it came right out of the womb, really. I was born in Liverpool, England, about a mile from Anfield. The greatest place on earth, as far as I'm concerned. I've been a lifelong Red, so this year, this gap in humanity with the Premier League and everything has been the biggest weight ever, of course, with what's going on. But obviously, there's more important things to think about. But yeah, grew up in England, moved around a lot. Moved to North America when I was 9 years old. Moved to Toronto, Canada. My dad would get jobs that would last a couple of years, and then we'd move to the next one. And then we settled a little bit in Phoenix. That's where I went to high school, and ended up going to Arizona State University. And then from there, I got a job a few years later in Albuquerque, and that's where I was for the last 16 years up until 2 months ago. So Phoenix, dry heat, super hot. Albuquerque, reasonably hot, dry heat. To South Texas, where I feel like, wow, I can't believe what it's going to feel like in June, July, August with the heat and the humidity down here.
Just get ready.
Yeah,
I mean, it is growing up in an area where there's humidity. You feel like you get up in the mornings. Like I remember this feeling going to high school. Especially, I don't know why those years stood out to me, but I would remember like getting up, taking a shower, getting dressed, getting ready to go to school, and the moment I walk out the door, I felt like I just took another shower. I mean, it just would hit you in the face, and it is different. I on the humidity piece, when I was in college, I did a road trip. I was actually had just finished college and was playing. There was an artist that was trying to make it there out of Nashville, and I actually played in the band, and we went on tour, and the tour was started in like the Virginia area and went like up through the Midwest. And once we got through the Midwest, we got out into like the likes of South Dakota and Wyoming and all out that way, and there was just very little or no humidity. And the locals would complain about it being hot, and I'm sitting there looking at them like, what are you talking about? Like, this is fantastic. Like, are you serious? I could take another 20 degrees of this. Like, because what people don't realize is that, it could be, 80 degrees in a humid climate, and it feels like 100. When it's 100, you feel like you're just drowning. And yet in the winter, New York could be 20 degrees, and I've been in New York when it's been in the 20s and the wind's blowing and it's really cold. But you come into the South and it's like 35, 40 degrees, and it's so cold because that moisture in the air just makes it's like a thick, cold blanket on top of you. So it's different, and it does take time to adjust. And look, you're in for a treat this summer, and you're going to be like, I'm going to have to install showers everywhere I go. Like, can I find a way to put a shower here? Can I?
My first week on the job, I said, all right, or maybe it was my second week because the players had just reported to work, and I said, you know what, I gotta. It's my first time being president of a pro club, and I gotta really understand every aspect of the organization. So I called Coach Jerson Echeverria and said, hey, you've got a new trialist coming in for training today. And I went and trained with the guys. And I made it about, I'm not exactly in the best of shape. I'm not tremendously out of shape, but I made it about 75% through the training session. And then that humidity just caught up with me. This is in February, of course. So it caught up with me, and I took a little break before the end and then played in the soccer tennis tournament. It was one of these low-key practices where they just goofed around a little bit at the end. And I actually made it to the semifinals of the soccer tennis tournament with our center back and our right back twice. So that's like my little claim to fame down here so far. It's semifinalist in the soccer tennis tournament 2 times in a row. So.
Well, how much of that was on sporting merit, and how much of that was on, hey, there's the boss. We gotta make him feel good.
It depends who you're asking. If you're asking me, I'd say it's 100% sporting merit, Daniel. Come on.
I'm just messing. Oh man! So I want to go back to that time when we first met in New Mexico. You were living in New Mexico, and this was pre New Mexico United. Matter of fact, when you and I first met, you were talking through the idea of New Mexico United and the idea of something bigger for New Mexico. But you were running a different club at the time. Tell us a little bit about that club and the origin story of that before we get into the kind of New Mexico United story.
Yeah, the club you're referring to was Albuquerque Soul FC of the PDL, now known as USL League Two. And it was my education in the soccer world. It was like another college degree. So I had been an entrepreneur for 10 years. I owned a food delivery business that's become obviously almost an essential business with the current times, where you order from multiple restaurants. We ended up selling that later on, but I owned that business. So I had the business acumen. I just had, and I had the passion for the game. I just never had the experience in working in sports. So I said, well, why not just jump into the deep end? A good friend of mine and then became a business partner from California who had an interest in soccer and an interest in the New Mexico market. And then a local guy who I'd become good friends with named Larry Espinoza, goes by Lencho. And he had played for the New Mexico Chili's back in the day. He got involved too, as the Chili's were part of a kind of a dynasty team for New Mexico purposes. They used to draw 4,000 or 5,000 fans a game in the late 80s and early 90s, and they were a fixture in New Mexico. Went away, I think, in about 93, 94. So there had been some other semi-pro teams that had come and gone. There was one called the Asylum that did pretty well. That had a well-known figure in some of the soccer world named Pat Grange. I don't know if you've heard of him. Unfortunately, died of ALS at age 28. But his story has been told on ESPN and a couple of other outlets. So we were the first kind of semi-pro soccer team for a number of years, and we had a go at it. I think we did pretty well. We were playing at a high school, Daniel, in Albuquerque. Like 80% of the population lives on the east side of town, and 20% live on the west. So ideally, you want to be on the east side of town. We couldn't find a facility that had lights and bleachers anywhere really. There's not we were facility challenged in New Mexico. And so I found this school called St. Pius High School, Catholic high school. Great people. I'll never forget Dave Sullivan, who's the guy that really helped us get started. They would basically let us use their beautiful facilities for training and for the game day, but it was on the west side of town. So we already had that working against us, because in Albuquerque, everyone east won't want to go west. West siders love going east, but east siders don't like going west. And so we're already on the wrong side of town, and we didn't have any light, and we had limited bleachers. So we would bring in, it was Albuquerque in the summer, so we couldn't sell tickets if we were going to play games in the afternoon and 100 degrees in June. So what we did is we brought in these construction light towers, and they were like, the 30-foot light towers you rent out at a construction site or at a parking lot. So we'd rent 10 of those. I remember one game we even tested out to see if we get better light. there's a thriving movie industry in Albuquerque, and I remember bringing in one of these huge movie spotlights, and it was a bunch of hippie film guys that like sat at the center field on the opposite side of the fans and just slowly launched this huge light. There was a spotlight that came onto the whole field. That ended up being too expensive, and we couldn't do that long term. But I mean, we had to make ends meet, right? I felt like it was a mission that we had to put a product on the field and give Albuquerque a team to be proud of. And we pulled out all the stops, and like most teams, we lost a ton of money that first year. Thank God for Aaron Hegman, who was the owner that kept it going from California. And then we started to stabilize year 2, year 3, year 4. I think that's when I met you, was year 4. And the Soul became a recognizable name in the town, and there was still a ton of room for growth. And the goal was always to go pro, but at the time we just didn't have the resources to do so, and it ended up going a different way. But I'm really proud of what we built. Larry Lencho-Espinosa deserves a ton of credit. Aaron for keeping the team going. And, for me, it was a passion project. I was still running my business most of the time. And I was just helping out where I could. But there's so many little things you don't think about when you haven't ran a team before, all these little expenses that came up. So such an education, a proud period of my life, running that franchise for 5 years, learning the ropes, and then eventually it prepared me for going into the USL world and the USL Championship world.
So before we get to that, a couple of questions, because when I look at the American soccer ecosystem and the landscape, the hustle, the grit, the drinking in a lot of areas, and yet your story, so talking about the Soul is filled with ingenuity. You not able to find facilities, the part of town that you preferred, and then not having lights and trying to figure out how to work around that with bringing in temporary lights. So one question I would have for you on that is, why are there not more stadiums in New Mexico, and especially Albuquerque, and why in the stadiums that are there, how many of them do lack resources like lighting to be able to play sporting events at night?
Yeah, there's not a ton of stadiums, like, as we say in England, full stop. There's not a lot of stadiums. The ones that are there are mainly football stadiums. So the high schools there all share a couple of 3 facilities actually, and every single one of them is too narrow to play soccer on. Most of them are turf, which obviously, again, we had a business to run, but we cared about, we're purists, right? We cared about the game, and we felt like it should be played on grass and not on turf. We wanted to put a quality product out there for the fans of Albuquerque that deserved it. So we were really, really dedicated to finding a facility that had grass. The only one that could have happened was the UNM soccer stadium, and the administration at the time at the University of New Mexico just didn't want to entertain it. And it took me 3.5 years till I finally got a meeting with them. And again, you talk about the kind of the persistence, and this was Lencho and myself just consistently calling them saying, hey, we've got a product that the community wants. You've got a facility. We're not asking for it for free. We want to pay something for it. Tell us what we can pay you. And there was the red tape of the university. The new administration is coming after that. That's been fantastic since Eddie Nunez came in as athletic director. He came from LSU. And then it changed a lot then. So we were able to finally get to play at UNM in our 4th year. They gave us 2 games. That was their compromise. And then they gave us 3 games the next year, which was my final year with the Soul. But the thing was, there really wasn't many options. And so I'd been in business before. I'd owned small businesses, and I said, I'd face bigger challenges. So, all right, we don't have a place to play. Let's figure out a place to play. And we made it work.
So looking at what came next, when you and I met, this was kind of, you were in the middle of these kind of conversations about, what might come afterwards in terms of a professional club coming to New Mexico. Now we obviously know as New Mexico United has made all kind of waves since they've come into the USL Championship. Might be the best club in America in terms of, the media and the marketing and all the jersey reveals and so, just been incredible content that's come out of the club. Walk us through that story. Like, where did those conversations begin, and really what was the big idea in terms of launching a professional club at the USL Championship level and bringing that club and starting that club there in New Mexico?
Yeah, good questions. And again, being a part of that startup as well was just pretty much the proudest moment of my life. Just to be around so many talented people. So the story of how it started was, I was still running the Soul, and I was trying to figure out a way how we could go pro. The USL Championship franchise fees were increasing, it seemed like, every 6 months. So the price of admission, or the barrier of entry, as you could say, was getting higher and higher. So as that happened, I realized we weren't going to be able to do it ourselves with our current ownership group. So how are we going to find this? So I was introduced to this guy. It was at a coffee shop. It was from a mutual friend, and Lencho and I went and met with him and told him the story of the Soul, and then told him what we felt a pro club could do. And he got interested, and we were told that he qualified to be a primary investor of a USL Championship club, because, as you know, there's different requirements for different levels of soccer. And his name's Peter Trevisani. And so Peter and I stayed in touch, and like I did with UNM and like I did with the soccer stadium, trying to find a facility, I called Peter a lot. I probably bugged the hell out of him for a while. Yeah, he wasn't a soccer guy. He was an American football guy. He actually played linebacker at Boston College. And so I kept bugging him, and he was ready to go almost. And then he was taking his family on this trip to Spain. And so he said, I'm going on this trip. He's like, I'm not going to be reachable by phone. And I thought that was his way of telling me, look, I'm not interested anymore. So I told him, okay, I said, I'm going to keep talking to people and trying to find investors, because this thing has to happen. I felt like it was this thing inside of me that this has to get done. We have to find a way to do this. So I kept looking for people. Well, what I didn't realize is when he went on this trip, he was going to Barcelona. And he ended up being at the I think it was the Camp Nou, where that game was against PSG, and they needed 4 goals in the second leg of the Champions League to get to the next round. And I think Peter was at that game.
Wow.
And I think being around the city of Barcelona, seeing flags everywhere. If you ever see some images of New Mexico United online, you'll notice the flags everywhere. I think that kind of came from Barcelona. And Peter came back from that trip and was like, I'm ready to go, man. Let's do it. And so I had another friend of mine I introduced to Peter, and then we worked with an investment banker to get the remaining amount of the funding from a few other. We wanted it to be a New Mexican group. So it was 5 New Mexican businessmen that invested in the team. And these guys they did it for all the right reasons. It wasn't because they thought, oh, look, there's soccer. Oh, look, here's a Hispanic market. We can make money off of this. It was, look, we all have businesses in this marketplace. We want to improve the quality of life. We want to be able to attract talent to New Mexico. We want to be able to give New Mexico a product and a sport that it loves. And that's really how it started. And these guys had the right intentions. I'm still great friends with all of them, even though they probably a little mad at me for leaving. But no, and then you talk about the marketing side. I mean, I can't take any credit for that whatsoever. The team we had of people, we have a creative director. We had a creative director named Josh Lane, still with the club. Incredibly talented young man. We got him right out of college. We had the photo team, video team, Lucas Cash. He's the title is the director of innovation, but that guy is the social voice of the team. And he's also the kind of the heartbeat of the team, just the talent. These are the people you don't see a lot if you're not involved with the team. You see the Santi Moores last year. You see the Devin Sandovals, who are the star players, but the star people in the front office there's so many of them. I can't name them all. We've got Jessica Campbell, who's also a younger PR person that is now the director of PR. So it's like Peter has this ability to take an idea and make it fantastic, and he demands excellence. I learned so much from him because he never takes anything at face value. He says, all right, cool, that's a good idea, but how do we make it freaking great? And he challenges you and he pushes you, and he's just really good at that. So I learned a ton from him. And as I've come down here to my post now, every decision I make, I think about it. I'm like, how would Peter look at this? What's the right way to look at this? Because he teaches you how to think about things a different way. So I've been lucky to have some great mentors in my life, and Peter's definitely one of them. And that's really how the team started. So.
Now, launching the club and building the were you surprised at how community support, or was this more affirmation and confirmation of what you had always felt and why you were, I guess I would use the word driven to launch a professional club in Albuquerque?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised. I was absolutely surprised. I always knew there was something there. And deep down, I knew, okay, well, there's something that we can latch onto here and give this town, a professional sports team that's never really had. But I definitely would be lying if I said, yeah, I saw it playing out this way. And I think, the real reason for that was, and I appreciate your kind words, but I mean, this wasn't me that did it all. There was so many people. And I hate naming names because then you forget people, but like we had a director of marketing for so long named Liz Davis, who's incredibly talented. I learned so much from her too. But I think that the way that Peter gets the best out of people, and I've been quoted before in an article years ago or about a year ago saying Peter Trevisani's a crazy guy, and I mean that in the nicest way possible because he is. Because I've never seen anybody that has the ability to get the best out of people like he does. So it's just been. It was nuts to see how well it did. I remember going to I was on the revenue side, so I was the chief revenue officer. I was in charge of sponsorships and ticketing. And I remember going to sponsors and saying, here's what we're trying to do. And I would show them examples of other USL teams. And the ones that had more fans in the stands than others are the ones that sell better, right? So I'd have show them pictures of full stands. We're going to do something like this. And we're going to average, we've done these numbers. We had a great COO named Amanda Powers, who's now the president of FC Tucson. And she'd done these analysis reports that were so well done. So we said, look, we're projecting we're going to do 6,000 to 8,000 fans a game, and it's going to be awesome. And as I was saying that, I was kind of like crossing my fingers, hoping and praying, okay, I just hope I can deliver, because at the time, this was maybe 6 months before the season, we had 1,000, 1,500 season ticket holders, which we ended up with 3,300 that first year. But I just didn't know how the hell we were going to get to 6,000 to 8,000 fans a game. So here we are just kind of like crossing our fingers, hoping we can do it. And again, the Peter Trevisani's just got this way, right? We willed it to happen. And we ended up averaging 12,700 a game in our first year. And there's so many reasons that happened. Obviously, the sales team was really good. The marketing was really good. The coaching staff, really good. The culture that we were around. Every department was just, superb. So as I'm now trying to build this club here, I definitely don't want to copy and paste what we did in New Mexico because every market's different and has its subtleties. But I can learn from the experiences I've had there and try to duplicate the effort and see what's the best team I can make down here, front office, on the field, off the field. So there you go.
So in terms of that decision, right, of what you had dreamed about for so long there in New Mexico, you're seeing it play out, and then you get this opportunity at Rio Grande Valley. How did that come about, and how tough a decision was that to leave what had been a dream for so long for you to bring professional soccer into Albuquerque, and then to have to get faced with the decision of, okay, maybe I've got to leave that behind and pursue this opportunity with Rio Grande Valley?
Yeah, it was an impossibly hard decision. Just to even think about going to take the interview, I felt like a traitor. But at the end of the day, like every person looks out for the best of them and their family. And I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't out interviewing. I'd never even been on a job board since we started the team. But I was approached at a conference, the USL AGM, by a gentleman that said, "Hey, there's this guy. His name's Alonso Cantu. He's the owner of the RGV Toros, and he's looking for a club president. They don't really have one right now, and they're in need of one." And I just kind of said, "All right, well, I was humbled to you talked to me, but I told him, I said, I'm not looking for a job. I don't even know why I would even think about that." And then I went into one of the sessions at the conference and started thinking a little bit. I'm like, well, I'd be foolish not to look at it and see what the opportunities are, because I'm a true believer that you do have to keep pushing yourself. There's never a peak, a top of the mountain, right? You get to the peak of the mountain, and if you're done there, well, then why don't you just retire? Like, you got to go find another mountain that's bigger. And so I talked to the guy, talked to Alonzo, and he told me a bit about his story, and I was inspired. And so he offered to fly my family out here, sorry. And so we jumped on a plane, my wife and my stepdaughter and I. Again, like, I remember connecting through the Dallas airport. I was worried, was anyone going to see me? Because I felt like I was letting New Mexico down, because I'd been a part of this team being built from scratch. And then now I was, venturing out to see what else was out there. So it was a really difficult decision. But at the end of the day, Peter is the owner, but he's also the club president of New Mexico. So there was kind of a glass ceiling on how high I could go there. And I'm sure one day there would have been the opportunity to run the club. But it was, and the thing was, Peter's the right guy for that club. Like, yeah, I had a lot to do with getting it going, but at the end of the day, Peter is the perfect president for that club. And even if he had said, something like, "Oh, you can be the president, I'll be the chairman," or whatever, he didn't say that, but I wouldn't have said yes, because he's the right person for that club. And you've got to do what's right for people. And Peter's the right guy. So looking at that, seeing the opportunity here, this is a whole incredible opportunity in itself. I said, well, it's time to challenge myself. But the decision came down to, of course, my wife. And I remember getting off the plane. We weren't quite sure where the Rio Grande Valley was. We looked around. We did the tour. We talked to the owner. I remember getting on the plane, going home. We sat down. She looked at me. And she said, "Ron, we have to do this." And as soon as she said that, I was like, all right, that's really the decision right there. For her to use the term "we," and saying that we have to do this. And she'd never lived outside of New Mexico. She'd lived there her whole life. So that was the decision made for me. And then came the hard part of going to tell all my family members, which we were like a big family in New Mexico. So telling all my coworkers who were like family members that I'm leaving them. And so obviously there were some tears, and they threw some beautiful goodbye parties for me. And again, I'll always remember my time there very fondly.
So your wife looks at you and says, "We have to do this, to take on this role," in terms of, as you mentioned, always trying to better yourself, look forward, always, stay on your game. And I use the word aggressive, but it's really, it's just more of that kind of I want to keep self-improving. Like, I want to improve myself. I want to do more. I want to, and it's that kind of a achiever's mentality. When you were looking at this opportunity, what about the job post and the opportunity with this club? What were some of those things that kind of popped in your head? Like, we could look at this, we could do this, learning obviously from your experience, but also looking at the specific opportunity, Rio Grande Valley. What were some of those things that kind of caught your eye in the beginning that really kind of pushed you towards taking the job in the first place?
I think it's just the massive challenge. I mean, this is a big job here. Let me just clarify. So my job technically is not just soccer, right? So I oversee a company called Golden Grape Entertainment, which is owned by Alonzo Cantu, and he's got a great story. He started as an immigrant picking grapes in his young days, and then got into the construction world. He's a self-made guy, most successful businessman in the Rio Grande Valley now. For those that don't know, Rio Grande Valley is an area of South Texas. It's about as far south as you can go in the United States. Takes about an hour to get from the west side of it to the east side of it. On the far east side is South Padre Island, most famously known for spring break. And then where I live is McAllen, Texas. And then people say, well, what's the main city? What's the downtown? There really isn't one. It's a whole bunch of cities kind of grouped together. So Mr. Cantu has been probably the most successful businessman from what I've seen in this whole area. And so he had built the stadium. So we have our own stadium called HEB Park. It's pristine. It's gorgeous. He comes from the construction world, and he does high-end construction. So he took those practices into building his facilities. So the stadium is pristine. It was built in 2017 or 2016, and it still looks like it's brand new. He also built an arena. So I oversee the arena as well. We have live concerts. We've had Jennifer Lopez. We've had Cher just before the shutdown here. After the shutdown, we're going to have Pitbull, Ricky Martin, and Ricky Iglesias. So it's a full-on concert venue. And then we have he owns the G League basketball team down here, so it's the G League affiliate for the Rockets. And then It's the soccer team, of course, which is my baby and my area of focus right now is to fill that soccer stadium for that. So a huge challenge in that I get to learn some other things in the sports world, but I also get to do what I love, which is take a soccer team and grow it. And I never knew, when I was a kid, I didn't know you could work in sports. I didn't know there were jobs like this. So it's been an education for me going through the Soul, going through New Mexico United. And now here I get a whole new different set of challenges. And also you got a club that was towards the bottom in attendance and in sponsorship revenues and I think the marketing statistics weren't up there. So I got here just wondering, okay, well maybe the people are the right ones, maybe they're not. And shame on me for thinking that, because what I've found since I got here is there is no lack of hardworking people who care about this place, and they care about their community and they care about the company. I think they weren't just because there wasn't someone in my post. I think they weren't just given the right direction to go. And again, I still don't know what the right direction is as I learn the marketplace, but I'm here to learn. I've told them that I'm not here to copy and paste what we did in New Mexico and put that here. I'm here to learn from the experiences I got there and then try to do it the Valley way. And what's the right way for the Valley? Because every market has its own unique characteristics. So I'm still in the learning phase. But at the end of the day, my thought process is always a soccer team may financially be owned by an owner and usually a successful business person. In this case, Alonzo Cantu, but it belongs to the people and it belongs to the community. And if we can portray that the right way and give ownership to the community, I think we'll be successful.
In terms of the your own facility, your own matches, your own venue, I don't think that the soccer, public at large in America really understand how important that is. What is the stadium capacity of your stadium, and how have you seen, coming from New Mexico United into this opportunity, how have you seen having your own facility make an impact on your operations and even your bottom line?
It's phenomenal because you get to negotiate your own rent with the company down the hall, really, but you also get the operational agility to keep things at the stadium, to have things set it permanently. I remember, so New Mexico United, we played in a baseball stadium and still do. So beautiful stadium, great people to work with at the Albuquerque Isotopes, the AAA franchise there. However, they had a job to do, which was baseball, and we were just tenants for the day. So we would come in at 8 a.m. and our people would then go get all the signage that we had in the storage pod, had to bring it down to the field, set all that up. We'd have to set up the stadium, set up the suites, set everything. And this was our sales staff doing that. So the sales team that I was leading, this was our job each time. And then we'd have interns that would help out, and then marketing would help out too. And it was kind of an all hands on deck. And by the time we got to game time, everybody was exhausted from the employee side. And of course, you gotta get your smile on. But of course, as soon as the game kicks off, or in New Mexico's case, we had such a great pregame. So as soon as 7:17 hit for a 7:30 game, and we had our runners come out, we had this ceremony we did with Native American youth from all around the state. As soon as that started, you woke up, but you were exhausted, especially in the summertime, from doing all that work all day. The difference here is, we have it already in place. The stadium's set up how it's supposed to be. It's really just kind of pulling the covers off the leather chairs that are in the premium sections. And then because we have multiple facilities, we have an operations staff that helps us and a housekeeping staff that helps us with all these different facilities. So we're able to utilize that at a minimal expense because we share the expense with the other teams and the concert business and everything. So we're able to get that help so the sales team can focus on being there, interacting with their fans and their customers, and getting to know people, meeting their friends that are thinking about becoming season ticket holders. And then, there's a whole business side to sports too. Obviously, I love the soccer side and being on the field. I still geek out every game day when I see the freshly cut grass. But at the end of the day, on the business side, you got a job to do, and you got to interact with fans and see if they want to become season ticket holders. And it's a relationship business, so that salespeople get to have that relationship with the fans, and they're not exhausted. And so it's a big difference. You can focus more on the business of the team, and you're not exhausted by the time it gets to kickoff because you have to set everything up. So that's what I see as the major benefit for my situation here versus there on stadium. In
terms of the match day, it's for from an educational standpoint, the way U.S. Soccer classifies, professional league standards, they classify that stadiums at first division have to be a minimum of 15,000 seats, second division 5,000 seats. So your stadium is a first division standard stadium, which is
we're not quite 16. I don't know. I think you might be looking at the wrong one. We're at about 9,700.
Okay. So, but I'm sure with the way that things are set up there, you have the opportunity to build towards that if that opportunity came.
Yes.
So with that setup there, how has the players how have they responded, having, a place to call their own versus, you travel to some of the other places, they're playing in a baseball stadium, they're playing in a, this rented facility or that rented, like to be at a club where like, no, I've got a home stadium. This is like, have you had these conversations with the players, like this level of pride of playing for a club that has its own facility like this, and what has their reactions been?
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them just like talk about the fans need to have a sense of ownership. I think the players do too, and it does. It gives them a sense of ownership. This is our home, and the beautiful thing about the stadium too is the practice fields are right next to it. So they have the locker room they use, which is in the stadium, and they go out to the practice fields, which is outside the stadium, and then they'll come train on the game field the day before the game. So first of all, the game field is kept in pristine condition. So if you ever seen highlights or a stream on ESPN Plus of the game, it's a gorgeous facility, and again looks brand new. But then to be able to have their practice and their training right next to the stadium. I think that's great. Some would argue too, there's an argument to be made, train elsewhere and then, let them have that feeling of coming to the stadium just on game day. So there's two schools of thought, but I think the players love the fact, and we have a young roster. It's one of the younger sides in the USL. So I think it's great for these guys to come in and have this place to them that's theirs, and they get a sense of ownership.
For someone unfamiliar with the Rio Grande Valley, about how many people live in that area of South Texas?
Yeah, it's a really unique marketplace, right? So it's 1.2 million people that live in the Rio Grande Valley proper, but we are right next to the Mexican border here. And on the other side of the border, the two main towns, I think they're called Matamoros and Reynosa, there's actually another 1.1 million people in that area. So what I've learned since I got down here, I started researching the business landscape. Simon Malls, who have malls all over the country. If you don't, most don't usually put their name on it, but if you've got a big kind of high-end mall in your community, it's usually owned by a Simon or someone like that. And their busiest, highest volume mall in the country is right here in McAllen, Texas. Same with Sam's Club. Sam's Club's highest grossing location in the entire country, Sam's Club, owned by Walmart, is their highest grossing location is right here in the Rio Grande Valley. So it's a unique marketplace where you get the 1.2 million people that are here. You also got 1.1 million people just across the border. A lot of them will come to that mall to shop. And then 2 hours from here south is Monterrey, Mexico. And then north, you've got San Antonio, which is a few hours away, and you got Houston, which is a few hours away. So it's kind of centrally located in the middle of a lot of population. And it's the economy here has been really good for the last 5-10 years that I've done the research for. So I think there's a ton of opportunity here.
Well, when you look at the everything going on right now with the coronavirus and the pandemic, and what kind of effect has that had on, the season had just begun and then everything just kind of went on lockdown, and now there's all this uncertainty and trying to figure out unknowns, when, how, a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. How have you and your team been coping as you have tried to, keep up with updates and then planning for the future?
Yeah, it's obviously challenging, and my heart goes out to people affected directly by the virus, and no one's immune to this thing. And I've even had family members that have had it. Some of my members in England have had it. But there's also, positive things that have come out of this. My uncle was 81 years old and went in the hospital for it. He wasn't in good health, and he actually came out and recovered from it. We talked to him on Zoom the other day. So that was really cool. So, yeah, there's definitely the challenge of it. There's the reality of it's affecting, obviously, business, and Texas starts to reopen tomorrow as we record this here on Thursday, the 30th. Texas starts to open businesses tomorrow. But we're in the business of mass gatherings, and it's going to be a little while before we can safely, I'm not going to say we're allowed to, before we even want to, bring a ton of people together. But I think, we're learning a lot every day about our communities. We're learning a lot about our people. You see the birthday parades that happen of people driving by. You see the good and humanity coming out. And as, from a business perspective, I've had challenges in other businesses. We've kind of looked at this opportunity. We also brought on a guy named Tali Yunick, who worked with San Antonio FC, most recently Des Moines, Iowa, and getting them ready for their USL Championship team. He came down to work with us, so he's here now too. And Tali and I have been working really hard on, all right, so how do we use this time to mature the organization while we're battling COVID-19, but mature the organization, get it to a place where the business is more organized. We've got processes and standard operating procedures in place. We've got a lot of different departments in these businesses that are overseeing the facilities, the teams. So getting everyone, on the same sheet of music, getting everyone beating from the same drum. I'm going to analogy this one to death, of course. But we're using the time to mature the organization and get ready to come back. And all along, the messaging has got to be there, that we're there for the fans. The fans are there for us. This is a two-way relationship. And that's, again, a lot of what I learned from Peter, I think, is it's got to be two-way dialogue with the fans. And we've been super active on social media. And I think other people have noticed that. There's fans of other teams that have acknowledged our marketing team, who's doing a phenomenal job. And like I said, it's not like I brought in a bunch of hot shots when I came in here. It's the staff that was here that I think are now, realizing their talents and doing such a phenomenal job in marketing these teams. And we're going to be ready when we come out of this thing, but when it's time and when it's safe. And sports, there's an old saying, you don't realize what you have until you lost it. I think people are going to feel that way about sports, is that, oh my gosh, what happened to my live sports? So I truly believe we'll be a highly coveted product when we get back, when it's safe to come back. And hopefully, people get their jobs back and are able to go to live sporting events. And I'm sure budgets are going to be tight, so we have to be patient and be thoughtful. And in sports, every fan is a relationship, and you don't get to, like New Mexico, 12,700 fans a game. We did that one fan at a time with blood, sweat, and tears, and that's how we're going to try to build this organization here. And it's not let's see what we can do to get 20 people to buy a ticket and 80 people to buy. Yeah, it'd be great if that happened, but if we build this thing one relationship at a time, it's going to be invincible, really, to anything except for a pandemic.
Well, last question for you. What are you looking for on the conclusion of the Premier League and Liverpool finally? They're my second favorite team in the world. Barcelona's my favorite club of all time, but I'm a big Liverpool fan. So how excited / nervous are you about learning the final plans for the Premier League and Liverpool finally getting to claim the Premier League title?
I'll tell you, Daniel, I left England in 1989. We got on a plane for Toronto on November 3rd, 1989. And that year was the last year that Liverpool won the league.
So it's your fault.
So I think it's my fault. And I think Liverpool has missed me being in England. And so, maybe the move to Texas this year gave them motivation. I don't know. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's incredible to see the way they played this year. I've gone back and watched, if not the full game, highlights of the games. I don't get a lot of free time these days, but sometimes if I can't sleep late at night, I'll throw on YouTube and start watching some stuff. It's just there. Whether or not you're a Liverpool fan, it's a beautiful team to watch, and the football they play is just so much fun. We started a Liverpool supporters group actually at that bar that we met at, Daniel, that Star Brothers Brewing. We started a Liverpool supporters group there 5 years ago with 4 guys. And then we had with 4 guys, 2 ladies. And now there's, 400 members. Every game is watched at that bar. And a lot of that is attributed to the style of play I think that Liverpool has. And people that weren't even soccer fans would come check it out. They'd come get a pint of beer and a breakfast burrito on a Saturday morning and then watch this game, and how it was like church for a lot of people. We all came, we said hello to each other, gave each other hugs, and watched the game and watched Liverpool play that beautiful style of play. And I think that's the thing that we all miss, is coming together for the beautiful game. And we know it's coming back, and we just got to do it in a safe and mindful manner. And we'll be back to the days where we can all come together, share a pint, and enjoy football together.
Absolutely. I was asked earlier during the show, someone sent me a DM about would I feel the same way about the league getting finished and Liverpool winning the title if it was some other team, if it was a rival. And I do. I want to see the seasons finished. I don't care like what league, what club. I would rather see all of the leagues. Like the Eredivisie has canceled the rest of their season and said there will be no champion. They're just vacating the season. I would prefer to just wait it out and finish this one first. Because everything's already gone into it. So may it come across that I really want to see this season finish because I want Liverpool to win the title? I'm sure it does, and I really do want them to finish out and win the title. However, I would feel that way no matter what campaign it was and what league it was. I like to see things finished that you start. And speaking of that, you're nowhere near your finish, but you have done really good work in New Mexico, and now you've begun really good work there in South Texas. Best of luck, Ron, on that endeavor. We appreciate you coming on, and love to have you back on again soon when we get back to being on the field and seeing matches played and communities coming together. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Daniel. I love listening to your show, love interacting with you personally, and to all you soccer fans out there, just take care of each other, and we'll all be together again soon, just watching the game we love. So
absolutely.
Keep at it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you so much.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. That is Ron Patel, president of Rio Grande Valley Toros FC there in South Texas. Big thank you to him for coming on the show today. As always, you can watch the show on danielworkman.com/watch. You can find all the links to catch it on YouTube, Twitter, etc. Thanks to all the watchers, the listeners, those who send comments and ask questions. We appreciate it as always. We'll see you again tomorrow.